Good morning. It's Liverpool Transfer Daily here on the Blood Red channel. I'm Guy Clarke. Thanks for joining us. Alongside me today, Emmet Gates of Liverpool.com. And we're here as ever to talk of the latest Reds rumours and cast an eye over what the rivals are getting up to as well. If you want to get involved, get into the chat box and we'll get to as many of your questions and comments as we can through the course of the show. On the agenda today, we have Jude Bellingham and Jules Kounde. And Emmet, let's get into Bellingham first up. Well, the 2022 summer business seems to be done, so only right, perhaps, that the 2023 summer saga begins now.
Yeah, always looking ahead to the future. Yeah, I mean it's one of those where we've been reading over the last week that perhaps Liverpool are trying to get a deal done for Bellingham now, but he won't arrive until next summer. Kind of shades of the Naby Keita deal. And if I remember correctly, Liverpool struck a deal with RB Leipzig, I think, in the summer of 2017, and then Keita stayed in East Germany for another season and then came over to Liverpool in the summer of 2018. So I think we could be perhaps seeing a deal in that manner struck. But I think it would be smart on Liverpool's part to try and get a deal done this summer if possible, because if Bellingham has another great season at Dortmund, his price tag's only going to go through the roof. And there's also been, reports that Real Madrid are kind of sniffing around and they see, obviously they signed Tchouaméni this summer and they see Bellingham as, another midfielder that they will perhaps be going for next summer. So the last thing Liverpool want is to get into a bidding war with Real Madrid, who obviously have a lot of money, because they never signed Mbappe, so they kind of have money to burn in a sense. So yeah, I think maybe perhaps getting a deal done now, and even if they leave Bellingham in Dortmund for another year, I think that would actually be a really, really good deal on Liverpool's part.
Yeah, no, definitely. Sky Germany reporting that Dortmund are going to do what they can to fight to keep Jude Bellingham. The rumoured figure around the 102, 103 million pounds that's supposedly on Bellingham's head right now. I mean, in terms of how Dortmund do this, we've seen it over the past couple of years, haven't we, with Sancho, with Haaland as well, that it seems to be one big name per summer that's going. Equally, the talk begins very early on kind of the player who's going to go. Dortmund seem to set a very high bar of what they want for a player and ultimately actually drop some way below that. With Haaland, of course, there was a release clause, but go back to last summer, there was talk they were going to try and maybe cash in for double of what that release clause was. Never quite happened. And with Jadon Sancho, I think they had £100 million on his head and he went for maybe less than or around £80 million in the end.
Yeah, and I mean the thing with the Holland move was I think that was a Mino Raiola specialty, lowering the release clause, so it made it easier for Holland then to leave, because obviously his career has been meticulously planned out. 2 seasons here, 3 seasons there. He'll probably be at Man City for 3 seasons, and then he'll move on to maybe Real Madrid or Barcelona or wherever. So yeah, that was. I don't think with Bellingham there is that clause, that at a certain summer the price tag, lowers. So yeah, I think that's why obviously it was easier for Man City to sign Holland, because it did, decrease from, the summer of 2021 to this summer. But I don't think with Bellingham that's the case. And I think perhaps from a Borussia Dortmund perspective, they can't be seen to be losing two key players in the one summer. Like if they lost Holland and Bellingham this summer, and if Bellingham went to Liverpool now, I think there'll be a bit of an uproar among the fan base. So yeah, I think it's a difficult one to see. I think Dortmund will perhaps this time get full value for Bellingham, and if he has a really, if Liverpool can't strike a deal this summer and kind of wait until next summer, if he has a really good season, in 2022, 2023, then that could rise. But yeah, you expect whoever wins the race to sign Bellingham will be paying, you know, triple digits in the millions for Bellingham. Obviously, given his age, what he has ahead of him, and what he's produced so far, I think Dortmund they stand to gain a big windfall for him.
Yeah, definitely. Right, let's look into the chat box. Good morning to those in the chat box and looking forward to today's show. Kumar's got in touch, says, hopefully we can side Jude this season in a pre-agreement. That would be relieving for us all. I have to say, I kind of subscribe to a similar idea of what Kumar says there in terms of I think the longer it goes, actually, maybe the less likely Liverpool would be to get this deal done. We saw it with Mbappe, for example. We saw it with Sancho. We saw it with Haaland. Liverpool, at a very early stage, were attributed with an interest in all of these players. But Jurgen Klopp spoke openly in a press conference at the back end of last season saying, we went to speak to Mbappe, realised what the figures were, and immediately turned around and went in a different direction. And to me, it feels sort of similar. The longer this goes on, as you said there with Real Madrid, the more that maybe some of the bigger clubs or bigger budget clubs kind of come to the fore and are willing to splash ridiculous wages on a player like Bellingham. We know just how structured that wage system is at Liverpool. It seems to me strike early, strike quick, rather than wait to get into a bidding war.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we kind of saw that with Darwin Núñez this summer. Liverpool got in early and got the deal done. They didn't allow it to drag out, um, which could have been the case if they had shown a bit of interest, but didn't kind of go in, full force. We also saw too with Luis Diaz, in January. It seemed like he was on the verge of going to Tottenham, and Liverpool just came straight in and actually offered less money to Porto, but obviously Diaz wanted to go to Liverpool over Tottenham, which always helps. If you have the will of the player, it kind of puts the ball in your court. So I definitely do think that signing Bellingham, the pre-agreement this summer, would save Liverpool a lot of time, and B, a lot of money. Because as I said earlier, if they don't strike an agreement and he has a really good season, Dortmund are just going to ask for more money. And like I also mentioned earlier, if Real Madrid or a team with more money, more financial muscle come in, then Liverpool, FSG don't like to get into bidding wars or, with clubs. They like kind of like a clear run, as you say, strike early when there's not a lot of interest and get a deal done. So yeah, I do think striking some sort of an agreement with Bellingham this summer and then leaving him in Germany for another year is probably the best solution all around.
Right, we are going to talk about what Liverpool's rivals are getting up to as well. But before we do that, a couple of questions in the chat box. One here: if the club sells Firmino, is the closest alternative to him Anthony from Ajax? And would you take him if Firmino were to be sold? Firmino was a player that we spoke about yesterday. And I mean, Emmet, what would be your thoughts? A, would you sell Firmino? And B, Anthony, do you...
I mean, yeah. I mean, with Firmino, it's a tricky situation because he's going into the final year of his contract. The chances are that he probably won't be offered an extension, and if you believe that Juve are going to offer 20 million, which I kind of doubt anyway, because I don't think Juve, from what I understand, Max Allegri wants a vice Dusan Vlahovic, and Firmino is not that type of player. So, and I don't think Firmino is going to swap Liverpool for Juventus just to sit on the bench. So I don't really believe the stories of Juve bidding 20 million. But regardless of that, if they did come in with an offer, I would tend to actually reject it and keep Firmino this season because of the World Cup. Diogo Jota and Núñez will be at the World Cup, and they're going to play probably to the middle of Jurgen Klopp's system. So after they come back from the World Cup, depending obviously on how far they go, they're going to need a bit of a break. And this is where Firmino, I think, could step in and lead the line again. If you Diaz one side, Firmino through the middle, Salah on the other, I think that would carry Liverpool through the winter. But just because of the nature of this season with the break in the World Cup, I don't think it's time to lose another attacker. So I definitely think they should keep Firmino and perhaps maybe just let him leave on a free in a year's time. As for Anthony, I can't profess to have seen a lot of him, but from what I have seen him, he seems more like a right winger who kind of cuts inside. So he kind of would be operating on Mo Salah's side of the pitch. But again, I'm no expert on Anthony, but I mean, he would probably be an option. But yeah, I would be more of the persuasion to basically reject any offers for Firmino and maybe let him have one final season at Liverpool, and then perhaps let him leave in a free in a year's time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think his value to the squad and what he can bring to it, the harmony and everything within that, as you say, losing another attacker, I think would be a big blow for Liverpool. Right, let's get into the rivals then. Jules Kounde, who's been a long time target of Chelsea's. It looks as though Barcelona may well hijack another deal. I mean, I think I've thought that Jules Kounde was signing for Chelsea for the last 2 summers, and it's not quite happened. And finally, looked as though it was going to happen, and Barcelona have shaken that money tree once more and look as though they're gonna pip Chelsea to the signing and leave Chelsea really with a defence that needs an awful lot of surgery doing to it. What are we? Less than 2 weeks out from the start of the new season.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy in the sense that I'm like you, yeah. It seems the Kunde, the Chelsea saga has went on for like 4 years at this point. It's one of those transfers that always gets linked every summer, but never actually materializes. So I'm glad actually that someone is signing him, just so the rumors can stop. And yeah, Barcelona, who have seemingly just found money non-stop. Maybe they found a few pennies down the back of the sofa at the training
Yeah,
facility.
I was going to say
And
I need to find that sofa myself.
um, but yeah, I mean, it leaves Chelsea in a awkward position, as you said. But like just over 2 weeks to the start of the season, and they still need, Thomas Tuchel still needs centre backs. Obviously, yes, I know they're saying Kalidou Koulibaly, and he will be a very good signing. But for the amount of defenders that Chelsea have lost, they still need a couple more. And and then they need to be signed, and B, they need to be integrated into the team, which takes time. And they won't have any preseason essentially with under Tuchel. So yeah, you kind of think what kind of state Chelsea will be in come the beginning of the season, and you can't really see them pushing Liverpool or Man City for the title. I think as of now, it's still the way it was last season. Liverpool and City going for the title, and everybody else. There's a gap between everybody else.
Yeah, no, it does seem as though that could be the case. Final one comes in here. What are your thoughts on Darwin Nunez so far? And do you think he'll be starting ahead of Firmino come the start of the season? Personally, I think preseason is going to play a big part to it. I think this weekend Emmet could provide a very big hint if he starts against Manchester City and plays well, and Jurgen Klopp has that kind of full understanding and belief that Darwin Nunez is ready to immediately go into Premier League action. He may well start ahead of him, but with Roberto Firmino, he's the tried and trusted. You know what you're getting, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that just through the sheer fact of what Liverpool paid for Nunez, he has to start. I mean, I think when you hand over that amount of money, it pretty much means that you're an automatic starter. And I mean, from what we've seen of Nunez in the preseason games, obviously he had the kind of baddish game against Crystal Palace, and there was compilation videos going on around on Twitter of all of his mishits and people calling him the next Andy Carroll and all this sort of stuff. And then the next game, he scores 4 goals against RB Leipzig, and now he's a superstar. It shows the fickleness of football fandom. Where he goes from bad to good within the space of one game. So I mean, from what I've seen, is for Liverpool in pre-season, I think he'll have no problems adapting, and obviously he will need more time. Obviously, but I wouldn't it wouldn't be, I wouldn't be surprised if Firmino started, and I wouldn't be surprised if Nunez started. I think it's good options to have if you're Jurgen Klopp, and I think for Firmino too, it's important that he's at a full preseason because last summer he was with Brazil in the Copa America. He came back late, and his season never really got going. He was always playing catch up, I felt, and the injuries also curtailed his season. And he just never recovered from missing the majority of preseason on international duty. So the fact that he's had a full preseason and he's looked sharp, I think, is also going to be a big help for him. And what could be his final season. So yeah, I think either way, Jurgen Klopp is spoiled for choice.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, we'll have to wait and see how it does play out for the Reds. Plenty to come ahead of that opening day fixture away at Fulham in the Premier League. Of course, there is tomorrow's game with Red Bull Salzburg to come at the weekend. The Community Shield in Strasbourg, following on from that, making their visit to Anfield ahead of the start of the new Premier League season. In the meantime, here on the Blood Red channel, we'll be talking transfers again tomorrow morning, and plenty more to come through the course of the day. From myself, Guy Clarke, and Emmet Gates. Thanks for your time and your company. It's bye for now.